Gene Snitsky is going to get signed in this era, 2004 here by WWE, depending on who you
Not
believe.
my fault.
I love you for that. He was a former football player at the University of Missouri. He was being trained at Office School. 6'4" to 6'6", depending on who you believe, about 280 pounds. What was your first impression of Gene Snitsky?
Look at that big son of a bitch.
This is before he fought babies too, by the way.
Yeah. He just was a big, nasty looking guy that was impressive. He's impressive standing there. If you're in a group of people and Gene Snitsky's in that group, people are looking at Gene because he just had that kind of he did have a natural charisma about him and a smile that would light up the fucking world.
We got some reports here in 2004 of something that seems unbelievable, but of course we know years later something would happen. There's discussions that maybe Austin and Hulk Hogan might actually be getting an offer from Dubai, from the United Arab Emirates, and maybe Barry Bloom was trying to put it together. When did you first start hearing about there being an interest and an appetite for big time, big money presentation wrestling in Saudi Arabia? Because 2004, that just shocked the hell out of me to read in our research for this show.
Oh my God. I mean, that's been a thing forever. I mean, I go back into the early 1980s from Saudi Arabia and Dubai and Abu Dhabi and that territory, that area of the world. Huge wrestling fans. They loved the business, anything that they could get their hands on. So when you look at early syndication, man, those were the people that were spending the money for it. So that territory, you could go in and you could put your tapes in there and make real money from it. In addition to that, even before you had the huge onslaught of VHS tapes, they were selling them in Saudi, in Dubai, and things like that. So there were always promoters. It was just the live events and things of that nature was something they did. They always did. The Von Erichs went over to Israel because of the strength of their syndication that they had over there. And it was, internationally was just something that wasn't tapped because it was unknown, and it was difficult in some places of the world to do business and get your money out. You could go in and you could run a show, be very successful, but you couldn't take the money out of the country. So you had to figure out how do you do this? How does everybody get paid? How do we reap the reward of this? And a lot of times you would find a international promoter that would be doing business in other parts of the world that could then transfer the money to some place that you could get your money out. But those were few and far between, and you had to learn your lessons, usually the hard way, by going over there and never seeing any money, from your hard work.
Let's talk a little bit about Rikishi. It's written here in the Observer in 2004 that there's a lot of heat on him because he's been asked to lose weight and he hasn't lost much, if any. He's hurt his ankle, so he's not able to work, but he does manage to work a show for Alpha in Allentown, which goes over like a turd in a punch bowl with the Office. And allegedly, he gets nasal surgery to help him breathe better in the ring, but he doesn't tell you guys. And it's written in the Observer, according to those close to him, he signed a great contract with a downside far more than you'd think for someone at his level. And this actually works against him when he's hurt, and they think he's not coming back as soon as he can. The heat is bad enough that it wouldn't shock me to see him gone. Do you remember this, the potential heat on Rikishi?
Yeah, I do. And it's a unfortunate situation because look, he's not in the best of shape, could stand to lose some weight, and he's just getting heavier. And then, you're under contract to work, and if you have an injury, that's one thing. But even if you have to have selective surgery that is going to help you, tell people And then you can schedule a time and make it work to where it's logical for you to be off. Instead, he did an elective surgery where, okay, he does a surgery, but nobody knows. And then he's like, well, I gotta take all this time off because I got this surgery done. So it just wasn't doing business the correct way. So there, it was like, okay, he's got it. He's got his deal now. Is he taking it easy? And those questions were definitely asked.
Let's talk about Bruno Sammartino. Linda would actually mention Bruno's name at an investors conference, and that caught a lot of people off guard because it felt like, boy, he's a name we're just not going to hear from again. And there's a little bit of context added where Wade says that he actually has a pretty good relationship with Jim Ross and gets along with Jim Ross. And they've had conversations about maybe doing stuff, going into the company's Hall of Fame and things like that. But of course, Bruno's pretty opinionated. He's very anti steroids. He's saying that Hogan was his right place, right time, had the right marketing. He got lucky. And he's pretty adamant that if he does anything with the company, he doesn't want anything to do with Vince McMahon. And we know eventually, about 10 years later, cooler heads would prevail. He'd go into the WWE Hall of Fame and he'd be reunited. I mean, he belonged there. But what did you make of this? Okay, we'll have conversations, but I don't want to talk to Vince. That's a little weird, huh?
Yeah, look, man, the heat with Bruno was one way. Like Vince didn't look at Bruno Sammartino and say, I hate Bruno. It was, when Bruno left over the issues with his son, Vince tried everything to keep Bruno here and pleaded with him, please, Bruno, we want you to be a part of the family. We want you to be here. So Vince didn't have the same hard feelings towards Bruno that Bruno had toward Vince. And Bruno just had a deep-seated hatred. And so from, the company standpoint, the company didn't look at Bruno as this enemy or anybody that they didn't want to associate. To the contrary, the company wanted to associate with Bruno, wanted to work with Bruno and do things. So that wasn't, that was all one way.
Let's talk a little bit about where the company's earnings are. It's written here, the company's strong profitability was particularly through cutting back more than 21 million in administrative expenses and another 30 million in office expenses from the last year. All departments were hit with major cutbacks, forcing fewer people to work more hours. And so much of the profit went directly to Vince's pocket through dividends, another 3.2 million for this quarter, and to pay off his private jet, which is actually a company plane that transports all the major executives. I mean, just the way it's written here, boy, there's a negative slant on it.
Of course.
And I understand that, hey, we're running a business. We got to manage the bottom line. But 21 million in admin expenses and another 30 in other expenses, like these had to be major cuts that you were feeling in 2004, right?
Sure, but then didn't miss a beat. So that tells you something too. That tells you that that 50 million, was probably not really, needed. And when you buckle down, and why are you in business? You're in business to make money. So if you have a business, you want to cut costs and you want to make more money. That's what you do. It's called capitalism, folks. If you don't, then don't be in business. And you don't like it, don't support it. Then if you want a free lunch, go to the soup kitchen. But I would prefer to pay for things and be in business. And we're in business to make money.